Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale figure duo unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at both Tyler and Johnson from Warriors of Future. Now I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped a link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys figure review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, it does have a very military vibe about it, which is spot on for Warriors of Future. Now, when Hot Toys announced these figures, I literally could not have been less interested. And then I ended up watching the movie on Netflix, and while it is not a perfect film, I had a ton of fun with it. The action was dope, and I loved the mech suits. So that's how I ended up deciding to pick up both of these releases. For Tyler, we have his name off to one side, then an image of Louis Koo in costume. The dead giveaway is it's got some battle damage on his face, whereas the head sculpt on the figure is not battle damaged. Then for Commander Johnson, an image of Sean Lau in costume. I like that they've hit future and also the middle symbol in metallic red, so when the light bounces off the surface, it pops. On the sides of the boxes, we have some very industrial looking, almost caution stripes up the top and bottom, some burning embers, as well as their names. And then around the back, warnings, legal information, as well as Hot Toy store locations. Underneath the slipcovers, we have open windows showcasing the figures and all of their accessories inside. Their names once more on the sides of the boxes, this time of course underneath the slipcover. And then just some sick looking artwork on the back of the boxes. I mean, pictures of the figures themselves in action, both with and without their head sculpts showing. I wouldn't have minded if Hot Toys had used those images on the fronts of the boxes. Okay, so the question is now, who do we look at first? I'm tempted to go with Tyler. I think we'll kick things off with Johnson. First in-hand impressions? So far so good. He's surprisingly heavy actually, which I totally wasn't expecting. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hot Toys got their start in the action figure industry making military figures. Whereas nowadays, they're more so known for their crazy engineering with their Iron Man releases. So, a movie set in Hong Kong, where they're based, featuring mech suit soldiers, this is like a perfect storm for them. And I can understand why they jumped on this license. Even though not many people have seen the movie probably outside of Hong Kong. Nevertheless, that doesn't take anything away from how good these figures look. What we are going to do now is get all of their accessories laid out in the light box, and take a closer look at everything they come with. For the sake of simplicity, all of Tyler's accessories are on the left, all of Johnson's are on the right. Starting off with their display bases first. They both come with the exact same base, which is good for us because now we don't have to spend a ton of time looking at two distinct bases. That's not to say you can't make them look different from one another though. This, before we get stuck into it, is a reused mold. The first time we got this base was with Force Awakens Luke. This was meant to be Arcto. And then we got it again most recently with the Boba Fett 2-pack from The Mandalorian. So we have an adjustable crotch grabber up top, and it's meant to be a little rocky outcrop. We've got washers in the sculpt work and a lighter grey dry brush over the top. So, the thing that I alluded to just a second ago is they've included this rock so you can plug up the hole where you remove the crotch grabber from, and now it looks like a completely seamless diorama display base. But, see this rock around the front too? You can remove that as well, and now you have a second crotch grabber port. So you can flip one of the bases around and have this big chunk of rock work around the front, rather than being at the back. So now the diorama display bases, even though they're identical, they can be reversed. Now they look a little bit different from one another. Let's go over their shared accessories first, the stuff that they both come with, then we'll move on to their bespoke pieces. The pistol is just okay. The sculpt work is sharp, there's texture for the grip, and there's some vent work and line work sculpted in. But the slide can't move, you can't take out the magazine, and there's not even a hole for the barrel. So they phoned it in for the pistol essentially. I think this is just meant to be stored in his holster, and they allocated the sculpt work and detail budget to some of the other pieces instead. Like the smoke and stun grenades, perhaps. My favorite is probably the smoke grenade because I love red. This is going to pop much more than this one when you have these in their gripping hands. The little rings aren't removable, but they are on super thin posts. So do be careful not to put too much pressure on those rings or the handles when you're trying to get them to hold these. So I think I found where the accessory budget went. The heavy machine gun. This thing is bloody gorgeous. It's essentially a chonkier rifle that's been mated to the top of a Chris Vector. It's an interesting design and it looks futuristic enough that I think it suits the world that these guys are from. You can rotate the barrel drum magazine around the back. You can move or remove the sights off the Picatinny rail. And there's a translucent window for the top sight, but no dot there, unfortunately. You can take out the magazine from the bottom of the Chris Vector, but there's no sculpted or painted bullet detail. And you can move these little clip pieces on the right side of the heavy machine gun. This little blue translucent plastic flame effect is the smallest accessory of the bunch, but it packs a punch. It is quite scene specific in the way that you use it, and you'll see what I mean when we plug it into their armor a little bit later. We do get the tactical knife with both of them. There's some silver dry brushing on the blade and the handle, but the hatchet is specific to Johnson. You can remove it from the sheath, plus the sheath is foam padded on the inside, so it not only protects the silver dry brushing paint applications on the hatchet, but it locks the hatchet itself in nice and securely, so it's not floating around in the sheath. Oh, and you can clip the sheath for the hatchet onto Johnson's outfit, and I'll show you how that works when we bring him out here. You can also holster the huge blade that comes with Tyler on his outfit. There's silver dry brushing on the blade. I have said silver dry brushing way too many times already, so I won't say it for the tactical knife. But it is there. This is the exact same knife that we just looked at for Johnson. And lastly, they both come with the same exact array of hands. Same paint applications, same sculpt work. So first off, we get two closed fists. Then a trigger finger hand for the right side and a gripping hand for the left. Two more gripping hands with a much tighter grip this time, so probably these are meant to be used with the hatchet and the tactical knife perhaps. And lastly, two open palm / semi-gripping hands, already installed on them out of the box. What we are going to do now, though, is get Tyler and Johnson themselves out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Except for their weapons and like the little pouches and things I had to install on them to complete the look. If you have not seen this movie or these figures just don't look all that interesting to you, I understand. Not every figure is for every collector. If you have seen the movie and you loved the action as much as I did, then maybe these figures are worth another look because they hook you with the film and then you stick around for the crazy engineering and the weapons and the light up effects and the head sculpts. While I do prefer one of these figures over the other, I have a spot in my display for both of these releases. They're going to stand out for all of the best reasons. Proportions are on point, they look like dudes in suits, and the suits, they are chock full of surface detail, and I know I've already said it, just one more time, crazy engineering. Anyway, before I keep repeating myself, let's move on to Commander Johnson. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Johnson's head sculpt. It's fine. It's not terrible and it's not perfect. I think the thing that's throwing it off for me is the mouth. You can see it's open and there's a gap in there, but he doesn't have any teeth showing, so he looks like he only has gums in his mouth. It's a very strange effect, and I don't know why Hot Toys did this. I would have preferred if his mouth was closed, just like Tyler. And they painted his eyes off to one side, so you're stuck having him looking off in this direction. If they'd have given him moving eyes and a closed mouth, then I probably would have displayed him with the faceplate up. Because he looks like this, I'm going to have the faceplate down in my display. Detail-wise though, it's solid. There's plenty of skin texture, the moustache looks good, and they've added this subtle speckling of high gloss paint, so he looks a little bit sweaty. There are some LEDs around the bottom of the helmet, which, in a real-world sense, practically speaking, they would serve no purpose. But when it comes to characters wearing mech suits in films and when they are shooting dark scenes, you do want to have those LEDs in the helmet so you can see the actors' faces and you can capture their performances. So that's why there are LEDs around the bottom of the helmet. There are some LEDs up top that are supposed to shine through to the eyes on the mask, and we'll see if that works in just a second. There is a lot of detail all the way around the helmet. We've got some silver paint with some washes on it, and there's even some texture for the mask part that would be sticking out from underneath the helmet. Overall, I think it's a serviceable head sculpt, but like I said, I'm going to have him displayed with the mask down. But I ain't mad at that because this mask design in the movie was awesome, and in figure format it looks just as good. There is a ton of surface detail, and the red eyes with the circles in them, they do glow a bit thanks to the LED inside the helmet, but it's just enough to help them pop and stand out against the black, grey, and silver paint for the rest of the helmet. Now, if you are trying to remove the mask, there's a little bit that sticks out on either side, and that's where you're supposed to wedge your fingernail under. Then you can pry it off from the front, and you can remove the mask. Take your time with it, read the instructions, and do be careful. There is a lot to look at just around the back. We've got the padded pouches, which do just have foam in there currently. You could remove the foam if you wanted to perhaps put something else in there. The spinal column detail, which has some pops of red on it. The military green armor plates with some speckling of dirt and grime on the surface. The little caution labels and stickers. And the armature that connects to the back, then the shoulder pads, then the forearm guards. It is on multiple different hinges and swivels and ball joints. So this does move around quite freely. You'll see what I mean when we get to articulation. But by far my favorite thing about the back armor plate is you can plug in this little thruster effect to make it look like he's just boosting around if he's running on walls or the ceiling or he's mid-battle. It's just a nice little touch that wasn't entirely necessary, but I like to see it. There's also a lot of detail around the front. The armor plating is sculpted plastic, same thing with the straps over the shoulders and the collar. You could have fooled me because that looks like a padded material collar. The mateness and the texture is what sells it to me. I do currently have his flashlight turned on, by the way. If you're curious how to do that, you remove this back plate, install the button cell batteries, and flick the switch. It's very straightforward, but if you're worried about doing that, just check the instructions. The shoulder pads are also sculpted plastic, and the forearm guards are free floating, so you can move them around, which also moves this armature. So I would suggest dialing in the pose first, then adjusting all of this stuff to get it to look as good as possible. Because if you try and get everything straight and situated and then do the pose, you're going to drive yourself crazy because when you move the joints, this stuff will start moving around too. He does have a fabric undersuit on underneath the exoskeleton, and for the most part, that is a good thing except for the screen printed areas. I am worried that this stuff is going to stick to itself and get creased and damaged over time. The holster is a real working holster. You can remove the pistol if you so choose, and it's nice and grippy. When you plug the pistol in, there's a touch of play to it, nothing crazy, It's nice and sturdy. I don't think the pistol's going anywhere. You do have to install these pouches, the ammo cartridges on his belt. You just slide them on there. But for the hatchet, you do want to make sure that you're hooking it onto the molly style strapping on top of the belt. And you're not hooking it over the top, unlike these pouches. That's how you're supposed to install them. I don't want to keep saying it, but the instructions tell you how to do that. Coming down to his legs, this is going to be a point of difference between Johnson and Tyler, because Tyler's got a massive knife on his right thigh, whereas Johnson doesn't. He's just got a smaller blade on his left thigh. Either way, these legs are beastly looking. You've got the thigh armor with B1639 on the right side. Then you have these blades on the shins and some massive chonky boots. The pants are once again fabric with a bit of screen printing around the front, and what almost looks like a woolen knitted panel on either side. Doing that in the high traffic areas, seeing as though this is nice and stretchy, is always the right call, because that means you can stretch the pants and you don't have to worry about splitting seams or doing damage to the fabric. Even around the back, we've got little stickers and warnings and battle damage and dirt and grime. Underneath the feet, there is some sculpted tread. Moving on to Tyler. Up close and personal with his head sculpt, you see, this is more like it, a neutral expression with his eyes looking straight forward. This is going to be so much easier to work with when it comes to posing. We're not stuck with him having that shocked look on his face like Johnson, and his eyes aren't off to one side. My preference would have been moving eyes, but if they can't give us that, then just paint the eyes looking forward. And I think it helps the likeness. I can see Louis Koo from pretty much every angle. There's heaps of skin texture, there's some shading for the skin and a subtle 5 o'clock shadow, plus that speckling of gloss paint to make it look like he's a little bit sweaty. You can close the mask in the exact same way as Commander Johnson. You're supposed to slot the top in underneath the upper part of the helmet first, then you can push the bottom in place, and now it looks like the eyes are turned on because the LED is shining through to those clear lenses. While I am tempted to go this route, I think for Tyler, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to have him displayed without the mask on. So I'm not boring you, we will move pretty quickly with the exosuit parts that are the same as Johnson's. Because for the most part, these are the same figures. It's just that the paint applications are a little bit different between the two. They have different head sculpts and different weapons. So the backplate is sculpted plastic. This stuff is plugged in with ball joints. It works on hinges and swivels and can move around. And you can open up this port at the back. Then you can bring in the blast effect, and you can install that to make it look like the thruster is activated. There are some little nozzles at the bottom, and this is kind of keyed, so you do want to make sure that you're plugging it in correctly for it to look like it's working properly, rather than having those little blue pieces sticking out over the top of this. It's the prongs at the bottom that I'm talking about. You want to have them facing the nozzles rather than being over the top of the panel on the outside of the thruster. Now around the front, all of the armor once again is hard sculpted plastic. You can move this stuff around for posing. The holster for the pistol is actually functional, and you have to install these ammo cartridges in their pouches on his belt. This is not pleather, this is sculpted textured plastic. You will also need to install his smaller knife on his left thigh, and his absolutely huge knife on his right thigh. Super simple, you slide it in there, push it in place, and it locks in position. So one of the other key differences with Tyler is he has B1626 on his armor and 26 up the top, rather than 39, which was Johnson's number. He still retains the sick-looking spikes on the front of his calf armor, and there is once again sculpted tread on the underside of his boots, just like Johnson. For a quick side-by-side comparison, on the left, Tyler, on the right, Johnson. These two figures look fantastic standing side by side. While there are other characters and creatures that I would like to receive from Hot Toys from this film in the future, If they decide not to make anything else from this film, which I think is likely because it didn't perform super well and it wasn't reviewed super well, I'm happy with just having these two figures representing the film in my display. They're visually interesting. Once you pop the masks on, they look even cooler. Going over articulation, I do want to do this for both of them. Even though the mech suits and the bodies are virtually identical between the two releases. The weapons, though, and the way they hang off the mech suits is different from figure to figure, so I think it is worth going over both. Starting off with Johnson's head sculpt, it's on a double ball peg and an articulated neck. Looking forward to there, looking up to there, more than enough range for some ceiling running poses, swivel and pivot side to side. The arms might look scary because of these armatures that connect up to his back. Don't worry about it. All of that stuff will get out of the way as you move the arms around. The arms will go up to there, going forward and back on soft ratchets, butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, and you can see that, right? All of this stuff is moving around, it's on ball joints and hinges, so no worries at all. Double bend at the elbow, going past 90, then for the wrist peg, it's a ratcheted hinge and swivel. The torso is padded and he's wearing multiple layers plus some bulky armor for the upper torso, so crunching forward, that's actually more than I was expecting, honestly. Going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. The film's costume designers cleverly left this spot blank and they didn't connect up the struts from his thigh plates to anything else. So that means the legs will go forward almost completely unhindered on ratchets, going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, and then a double ball peg for the ankles. Good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Tyler's turn. So like I said, I'm expecting a lot of the same, but maybe a little bit more range out of the right leg because he doesn't have that hatchet hanging down in front of it. For his head sculpt, also a double ball peg, looking forward to there, looking up to there, swivel and pivot side to side. I know I mentioned this with Johnson, but there's a ball joint in the struts and there are hinges, so the arms will go out to there, going forward and back, soft ratchets, butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, ratcheted double bend at the elbow, and a ratcheted hinge and swivel for the wrist peg. I'm still really impressed by the range of motion out of the torso. I was expecting these figures to be bricks because of the armor and all of the padding. We also get swivel and pivot side to side. The legs go forward on clicky ratchets to there, going out to there, and you can see this longer piece does just flex out of the way as it collides with the body. Swivel at the upper thigh. Ratcheted double bend at the knee, going past 90. And a double ball peg for the ankles, good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is 4 figures from a movie called Warriors of Future. Button cell batteries aren't very futuristic Hot Toys. I was expecting USB-C, and it would have been super straightforward. You could have removed this panel, plugged the cable in, had the head sculpt on a magnet, and power could have been transferred from the cable all the way up to the head sculpt via that magnet. Instead, we have 6 button cell batteries. You have to install batteries in his head and in his back. The second annoying thing is the masks are completely unpadded, and it's a very tight fit when you go to install them. You're supposed to wedge the top part under the brim of the helmet, then you push the bottom in and they snap in place. They look great on, but I am worried that over time they are going to press up against the face sculpt underneath and do damage. The third annoying thing is, while there is a lot of sculpted detail, it's all on one flat plane. It's mass sculpted detail, so there's no actual depth to any of the crevices, and the sculpt work isn't super sharp. Don't get me wrong, I am still happy with the way the exosuits look, but they're far from perfect. The first cool thing is these diorama display bases, they're simple, they're nice and compact, they're beautifully sculpted and painted, but they also have that party piece of being able to remove the rock, install the crotch grabber, or you can have them on the display base without the crotch grabber. and there's no massive hole left behind because of that rock. Going forward, I want to see more of this. If they give us diorama bases, give us the option of displaying it with or without the crotch grabber. The second cool thing is the crazy engineering for the struts on the outside of the mech suit. Having them on ball joints and pins and hinges so that all of this stuff can move around freely as you pose these guys, I think they nailed it with the design. The third cool thing, while the button cell batteries almost ruined the light up effect for me, it's the light up effect. The flashlight turns on, there are some LEDs around the bottom of the helmet, and when you put the faceplate on, the light does sort of bleed through to the eyes so they look like they're illuminated. Wrapping up on Hot Toys Warriors of Future, Commander Johnson and Tyler. I'm going to cut a long story short. If you're a fan of the film, pick up the figures. You are not going to be disappointed. I said it earlier, I could not have cared less when Hot Toys announced these two figures. And then one day I sat down and watched the film on Netflix. The film slaps. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, far from it. But the action is what you're there for, and it delivers. It's like a fusion of really interesting, cool video game mechanics and fighting styles and mech suits, merged together with some of the best elements of Western sci-fi movies. You will hear them say Pandora and Skynet, and that took me out of it a little. That's just them, I think, paying homage, like I said, to classic and modern day Western sci fi films. It's a merger of some of the coolest elements of all of that stuff, and that's why I ended up picking up these figures. Okay, enough about the movie. What about the figures themselves? They, just like the film, are not entirely perfect. I prefer Tyler to Johnson because I think his head sculpt is a little bit better. But the exosuits are almost flawless. The only complaint I have is the mass sculpting does look a bit soft. And I would have liked to have seen a touch more weathering on the fabric parts of the outfit. There's a lot of weathering on the exosuit, not so much on the black fabric elements, which do come across very clean. Everything else I'm on board with. They're going to be a blast to pose, and I cannot wait to put them both in the cabinet. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped a link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.